In this video, we're going to take a look at the circle parent graph. The parent equation is x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. And so you can see that you have a circle graphed here where the center of the circle is hk. And so as always with our other parent graphs, if you shift hk around, you are going to then be shifting your graph and thus changing your h and k values. So the locator point for this circle is going to be called the center, and that is going to be at still the point hk, as always the locator point is. Now the graphing form, you're going to shift both the h and the k. So the h is always grouped with the x, so x minus h quantity squared. And now we have to do y minus k to shift the y value with the k, the kick. And that is still equal to r squared. So if I shift this whole graph left, I'm going to be changing the h value. If I shift the whole graph right, I'm going to be changing it to be a positive. And then, of course, you can shift it up and down, and you can see how your k value is changing as well. Now, the r value will move up and down, and that will change what the radius of the circle is. So do be careful, of course, that the equation is equal to r squared, not just what the radius is equal to, so you do have to square that value. If your radius equation, if your r value was equal to 5, then you would need to have this equation equal to 25. Now the domain and range are both restricted for this particular parent equation. That's because you can see that it only goes from -5 to 5 in this scenario, but if I were to change my r value, that would definitely change what my domain is equal to. So the domain depends on actually two things. It depends on what the center is of our circle, and it also depends upon what the radius is. So this one is a little bit more complicated than the others, but if we think about it, say, okay, well, here's where h is, and I move r units to the left because that's my radius, and I also move r units to the right because that's the radius. So the domain is going to be h minus r is less than or equal to x, which then would be less than or equal to h plus r. So you can see how those, both the h value, the center, the x value of the center, and the radius play a role. And then the range is going to be very similar to that because you're moving up and down. So this is going to be k minus r to begin with on the left side, or bottom side technically, less than or equal to y, which then would be less than or equal to k plus r. So wherever your k value is, you move down r units, and you also move up r units to create your restricted range. Now, as far as lines of symmetry, there are going to be infinitely many here because any diameter that you draw through your center is going to represent a line of symmetry. So we don't technically talk about which one it technically is because there are infinitely many, and there are no asymptotes here. So because it is not tending towards any one particular value. So again, as we've looked at in our other equations, your center can be shifted around, and that changes your h and your k values, and then you can change your r values to whatever you particularly want in order to create that circle. Now the other interesting thing that we do have to note about this graph, unlike some of our others, is that this is not a function, right? So it does not pass the vertical line test, so it is not a function, and that's why when you have to type, if you were to try to type it into your calculator, you would have to type it into two separate equations. One where it would be, you would set this equal to y or solve for y, and you'd have a positive square root, and then you'd have to solve for y and you'd have a negative square root of all this sort of stuff. And so anytime you have something which is not a function, that is going to be the case. Now, last thing would be the Moodle syntax for how you type it into our work. And so that should follow straightforward from some of the others. You don't have to use too much, just x minus h quantity squared with the caret symbol plus y minus k quantity squared with that caret symbol is equal to r squared. Right, so you don't need to write more parentheses than what you need, and that's kind of been the common statement for these, just those around the grouping of what needs to be squared in each of those scenarios.